Hello and welcome back to Talk Tonight, and I hope that you're all well. It has been, I guess, like 10 days, 11 days where I've not done my podcast. For whatever reason, I've just been tired, I guess, and sort of like trying to get myself into a flow of getting busy and to be sort of like on top of what I absolutely need to be able to talk about. So, again, what I always say thank you is to everyone who goes on Spotify, goes on podcast, Apple, and goes on YouTube. And my TikTok has gone absolutely bonkers with information and video. We are now hitting like with between my Facebook and my TikTok and my Instagram has gone bonkers. So like talk tonight now without even like me and pushing like really hard, especially again over the last sort of like 10, 11 days or so. We're hitting the best part of 400,000 video views. Like I can't believe that the amount of people are watching this stuff. And like obviously when the podcast number one started, um, when I go back at it now, I am so lucky to get information that is interest, to get people. We've obviously got guests, we've got video, we've got everything going out there right now. So I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who is joining Talk Tonight. And it's becoming more of a bigger thing, which is what it was to be. So yeah, when I'm doing podcast number 12, which is this one, it's just me and it's back doing, when I go back at podcast number one, I was quite sort of like, worried about my speech. Some of my speech was like really difficult because of my aphasia and some of my stroke site situation and obviously my mitochondrial situation, but it doesn't mean affect like what I'm trying to say. And I know like sometimes I need to get the beard and that sort of stuff like half tidy when I'm doing my podcast, but I guess I'm trying to be real as much as I possibly can. So again, yes, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who does come on Talk Tonight. And obviously we're looking at potentially like rebranding, putting the website together. I've just gone sort of like live on Google information. So yeah, there's lots of things like going on like right now, but sometimes I can't get into the rhythm of myself. But I'm trying my absolute best to keep this going. So this is like episode 12. I've had like lots of people come back to me about different podcasts and to be my guest and that sort of stuff. Sometimes it's not easy for me to do that. So just trying to sort of like explain that sometimes it's my feeling and how I'm feeling, but like I've always got more fatigue now. I'm better. I'm feeling better. I need to put some weight on. That would be good. But yeah, just like again, just to say thank you. Okay, so episode 12. So it's called Fathers, Sons, and Finding Hope. So when I go back to being a father for the very first time, was obviously was when I was 28. I'm now 43 now. So my oldest son, Jack, is 15 years old. And that is obviously his birthday is today. But obviously I know the podcast is going to go out in a few days' time. But anyway, so Jack now is obviously my oldest son. So obviously he was born through my ex-wife. So again, we will talk about that now a little bit more complex. So Jack, I don't see Jack every other weekend anymore because I can't drive. It's very, very frustrating not to see my son all the time. Now he's turning 15 anyway. He started to get his own ideas of what he wants to do. Now he's playing football again, which is great. He's getting involved. He's got a girlfriend. Some things are changing for Jack and he's making his own ideas. Now, when I go back and sort of like to be a dad for the first time, I guess I like, even when I go back now and my mixed blended family, obviously I've got my own wife, and obviously it's my second wife. But Cara's obviously my wife, and we've known each other for like 10 years. Me and Cara have known each other for a long time. We became friends, and obviously it's a long story, but obviously I think we spoke about it in podcast number 1 anyway. But Cara now has obviously got her own daughters. They've become my daughters as well. They've taken my name of Owen, which is very positive. So I've got my own daughters. So trying to be a father to your daughter compared to looking after your sons, because obviously I've got my other son, Ivor, he's 8, and obviously Scarlett is 12, and Violet is 10. So obviously our mixed family is something that makes things more complex than most fathers. I guess I know that a lot of people go through blended families and that sort of stuff. They sort of like to understand that like things can become more complex. But I guess that like with Jack, things are very different. Obviously, when I was 28 years old, and obviously was with my ex-wife at the time. Both of us had our first ever child, and obviously my grandchildren's and that sort of stuff. We became our first ever child, and that was Jack, and he popped in early. He was popped in April. He was actually due in May. He was a bit early, sort of like 5 weeks early. He was quite small at that particular time. I could hold him on my hand, and to see my son for the first ever time, then I think I looked at Jack, because obviously he couldn't breathe to begin with, and then obviously suddenly started crying. And then I held him before his mum, because obviously he was having some breathing issues. I held him and then obviously gave him to my ex-wife at the time. And I remember looking at Jack and realizing, to be a father for the very first time, that to become a father, everything was going to change. And then I thought, I'm winging it. Like, oh my God, I am going to be a father. Now, a lot of my mates at the time, I think one of my mates had their children for the first time, but I know that some of my other mates didn't really have children back then. I guess that like to become a father for the very first time. Now, things were different for me because I never had a father. My grandfather died before I even met him. So my grandfather, his name's Ivor. Obviously my mum's would have been my mum's father at that particular time, and his name is Ivor. I never actually met him. So my gran, and obviously I've got Daniel, my brother. My when I was obviously getting born, obviously it was from my mum. My family obviously became sort of like blended at that particular time, because obviously I looked after my mum and my gran. So I never actually knew how to be a father. I never was in that sort of like father situation, because my father disappeared when I was 3 years old. So when Jack was born and I was obviously 28, I never knew how to be a father. And then I thought to myself, well, I'm going to be a better father than my father was, because he disappeared. Now, there's always stories, and everyone's got their own version of what situation was going on at that particular time. But for me to sort of like to understand what situation that was, I didn't really know what a father was. I didn't really understand what it meant, because everything in my family was a little bit more complex. I had an uncle, and that sort of stuff as well, but I never really knew what a father was. Now, back in the 80s, some of people sort of like didn't really understand. They didn't have divorces. They didn't have those sort of situations, their mother and fathers would normally sit together, and in the 80s, in the early 90s as well, there wasn't a lot of talk about divorce, and I didn't understand the version of divorce when obviously my mum, and obviously I started asking my mum reasons why I didn't have a father, because I was getting a little bit picked on in school. I know that Daniel was getting some sort of like some stress after other people because of we didn't have a father. And someone called me what is the term when you get called a bastard. Like, that's not cool. Like, obviously he was called, me and Daniel were getting called bastards. We didn't understand what that actually meant, and to say that word is horrible. And I know for a fact that, like, when I was obviously becoming a father for the very first time, that was horrible. Like, I wanted to be the person that I didn't know what a father was, but I knew that being a good person was going to be a better thing. Obviously, when I was in the Navy, I learned new things about my attitude, and how I was going to be a better father for sure. But when I was like 18, 19, and I was in the Navy, it didn't really give two shits out of anything, really. But then obviously, when Jack popped along when obviously when I was 28, I left the Navy at that particular time. But then at one point when Jack was about 1 or 2, I was going to go back in the Navy at that particular time. So I guess that, like, I was desperate to be a good father. I know for a fact that when Jack was born, I know straight away that things are going to become a little bit more complex and to be a father. Now, I know a lot of people go out there right now and trying to be a good father. And I know that there's other issues, sort of like that come down the road. But like I said, my situation then becomes a little bit more complex when Jack becomes, when he's born. And then obviously around about when he was about 3, me and my ex-wife, we had a divorce. So I thought to myself, this is just going back to the very beginning of what I was 3, 4 years old when I didn't have a father. But then obviously I've got to now be a father that is even better to see my son as much as I possibly can comes up. It becomes then more complex when I'm not allowed to see my son. And for whatever reason it was, things became more complex because I couldn't always see Jack and I could only see him every other weekend. And to be honest, I was still had to work, obviously, and things become a little bit more complex at that particular time. And that becomes like very stressful for people when you're trying to sort of like be in that divorce situation that obviously my mum was in, obviously divorced with my father. All of a sudden things become a little bit more complex at the time. So you're trying to be a good father, and then all of a sudden then you're in this sort of like situation where I've had to go back and live in my mum's and my gran's house. I've got nowhere to stay because then it takes the mother to like go and live in the same house that I was in, as part of obviously the family that me and my ex-wife had. And then all of a sudden then I've got to be the father that's going back to the house that I obviously lived in as a child. And I've got nowhere to stay, but I still have to work and I still have to pay maintenance. I have to pay everything for Jack at that particular time. And even when he's 15 years old now, I still have to pay maintenance for Jack. And look, I pay for anything for Jack, whatever he would possibly need, as part of obviously a divorce situation. Now, when you go back and you think that like you're trying to be involved as a father, you have got to be able to do that. You have to be a father. Now, we're in a situation where in our house where obviously Kara's ex husband, for whatever reason, he is not paying maintenance. He is not seeing the children. Now, obviously, he's not a very good father, right? Because basically, he doesn't pay any maintenance. He doesn't see the children since they, again, like Scarlett is 12, Violet is 10, and they've not seen their father for about 6 years. And there is obviously a reason why. And then when you go back then to obviously for us becoming a mixed family, I'm saying like, I do not understand why Kara's ex-husband is not paying any maintenance or any money towards looking after obviously what is now my children. Yeah, so they're not paying anything for that sort of situation. So when I go back at it now and go, right, well, I know for a fact that even like I've had my own health issues, I still would do anything for my children. Obviously, I've got a situation with Ivor's, obviously he's my son, and obviously he's from a very different situation that I was with at that time, but I've got a very good relationship with Ivor's mum. Again, I see Ivor 50% of the time. So it's not like every other weekend and that sort of stuff. I see Ivor 50% of the time. I take him to, we go to school. He does everything, his schoolwork. Me and my ex-partner, we look after Ivor. Everything's covered. There's no problems that I have with, obviously, my ex-wife that potentially is sometimes it's making stressful situation. And I know that Kara's having a very similar situation where she has had no maintenance payment from her ex-husband. And there is responsibilities which is causing over £25,000 of maintenance, which has not been paid. I don't know how any father could not pay and look after your children, after their children. I don't get it. Now, there is charities, there is people that are not allowed to see their children. And now that comes as well from the women as well, who don't see their sons and to see their children. It's not normal. It's not normal in that situation. And it should never, ever be like that. Now, like I said, I try my absolute best to see my son and to see Ivor as well. And obviously, I have the girls then 100%. They are now my daughters. They've got my name of Owen. I love my girls, even though like trying to look after girls is very different to looking after boys. But I am trying my absolute best to sort of like to love my daughters very similar to I love my sons. I see them as my own, and I always will forever. As much as I'm life, I would always do that. So I don't understand sometimes where people becomes very stressful situation where father's not paying for maintenance. Maintenance is a very different story. Maintenance is a old version of what you should pay for. No, maintenance is not just like 150 quid, like, per month. You still have to pay extra money. They always want to go on holiday. They always want to do like extra things. They always want extra trainers. They always want the best things that they always want. So there's not like sort of like much more than you can actually do. But maintenance is not like a huge thing, but when you're not getting anything at all, that is not right. But obviously mothers not seeing their children, because obviously there's an argument going on all the time. Arguments. Now, look, I'm not saying that I'm the best person and this is the best situation that I've been in. But trying to be like a father, it's something that you have to keep going. Like, even when Jack now is 25 years old, I'll be going down the same thing. Now, my mum does exactly the same thing for me. I'll say, Mum, I need something. And she will do it for me like straight away. And I know my stepdad, Alan, is absolutely brilliant. Um, they are so good to me. And I know that Cara's parents are absolutely brilliant as well. So we're very, very lucky. I know that Cara's mum and dad are in Blackpool. So again, we're in that situation in Blackpool, and my parents are obviously in Swansea. We're sort of like locked into the middle of Coventry. And the reason being is obviously the girls are in school in Coventry. Iva's schools are in Coventry. So we are sort of like with our kids now, we are sort of like we're locked together between sort of like Swansea and Blackpool. But there's a lot of love that comes back from our grandparents. And I can't say anything better than that situation. I'm very, very lucky. But I know that some people, they do struggle, sort of like financially. We're going through our own financial problems. That's because of me not working. I'm not working because, again, I've got this disease of mitochondrial. Now, I am trying my absolute best to do some charity stuff that I used to do that'll just sort of like keep me going. I'm interested in obviously coaching football. I coached boxing for 11 years. I've always been involved with any sport that I can do. So I will always try my best to get better than I was, but unfortunately, I'm not going to have a great cure situation that I'm in. But I'm not going to whinge about that because I still have to try and do my absolute best to look after my children. Again, it's a situational where you're trying desperately to see your children, and then some people lock out how you can see your children. Now, there's very sort of like different situations that you sort of like you deal with, but please don't think that you don't have help. There's lots of like charities and help out there that you can get some help and some sort of like, and we will always put that on all of my podcasts. Is I always put down like a list of how I can help and get information out about like certain situations with divorce and with stress and with like anxiety and not seeing your children. So when I go past at hitting a low point in my life, is not seeing Jack, and not seeing. I do see Iva, but like it's obviously five. Sort of like we're 50% the other time, but there's times then like I try to leave, not leave. They go to see their mums, and then I may not see Iva for a few days, or I might see Jack then for months at that particular time. And that becomes very sadness for me. And I know that probably makes sadness for you as well. What's it like when you are stopped or linked not to be able to see your children? I guess that's like everything becomes emotional and becomes into arguments and stressful situations. It's very hard to make everything sort of like stressful. You try your absolute balances of work and family life. Like family life sometimes becomes stressful and arguments, and you don't want to have arguments in front of your children. Now, obviously, like we do sometimes, we don't want to do that in front of our children because I know for a fact that I was very lucky that my mum and my gran sort of like looked after me and looked after Daniel at that times. And there was never a lot of arguments and that sort of stuff because we were never in that situation. Now, I was in a situation with my ex-wife at that particular times, and there was arguments. And I'm very lucky that Jack was very young at that particular time, so there wasn't a lot of arguments going in there. But then it became more sort of like a stressful situation. So you're trying to make like that easy as much life as you possibly can. So again, like things like sport and things like that now, you can sort of like sometimes you can use that as a strength to go and see your children, go out and, go to football or go and do something, go for a walk, take the dog out, do something together, like, because otherwise all of a sudden they'd be gone like 15, 16, 17, you won't see them. So try and sort of like to balance everything that you possibly can. Um, the big one for me is financial stress. Like, obviously, our situation, I was on fantastic money. I had a fantastic car. Everything was going really, really well for us. I'd say that like we had about £130,000 a year that was coming out there. Everything was financial. And then it was bang. Like I had nothing, nothing. I've had to sort of like get everything out of this house, sell anything that I've got to make sure that we can financially care for everything. Now, obviously, Cara is the paymaker for the house. So like Cara is obviously got her own business. So now Cara is the main business, the base partner who's paying everything. And then obviously I'm trying to be in the house to make things. I try to do my sort of like my military my life. So I'm doing some ironing, I'm doing some like cleaning in this house, doing everything, and then I always try to get the girls to be a little bit more like mine, financially, being saying you need to be up 5 times before, you have to do this at that particular time, you have to tidy up your room and that sort of stuff. So I guess that like my military comes into me. But things become like financially like really tough for anyone. And I guess I like people even with millionaires, um they still struggle. They still struggle with financial stress, and it becomes arguments. And I can't say that I'm the best person forever to sort of like to say this, but when you're trying to sort of like go through financial stresses, things become like, very, very difficult. And then that becomes like how you look after yourself and your family. You don't want to sort of like to link out with everything. So yeah, I guess I like with financial stress, we can put everything on the podcast as well, sort of like some informational about financial stress. So feeling isolated when struggling emotionally. So I talk a lot about mental health and anxiety and things which like you can't breathe. There's things then like which when it affects your body and how you sort of like you're looking after yourself. Sometimes you can just, for me, I do struggle some days where I sort of like just want to be left by myself. I can't talk. I go to bed at, a late amount of time. Things become like isolated. Don't ever be isolated. Be with someone, talk. And that's what Talk Tonight is all about as well. Don't ever try to be isolated from anyone. And even with your financial stresses and your balances of work, family, don't try to be as tough as what these situations come into. So don't ever be isolated. And emotionally, it makes you feel like sort of like so stressful and left by yourself and be isolated. You've got a family, whether that's in your children, that's in your grandchildren, that's in your mom and dad. sometimes I know that as men, we um we struggle. We sort of like we hold things apart. I'm very lucky that I've had a therapist and a hypnotherapist that has helped me down I guess the last coming up to 3 years. I've had therapists. I've had therapy. It's okay to talk about therapy. It's all about to be able to talk about yourself. There's other people that can work. I know that in one of my podcasts, which is quite recently, we're talking about things like PTSD. Like, there is always people that can go out to stress. There's like the Samaritans. There's lots of other things that you can talk about. So don't ever feel like you are isolated. Managing in like self-doubt. Yes, self-doubt is an issue. When you're feeling like you've got self-doubt to be a father, you are self-doubting yourself. Now, a lot of us are winging this, right? As much as we possibly can. But self-doubt and confidence issues, right? You've got to try and be as much confident as you can. Now, again, sometimes I'm not the best person to talk about this sort of situation, but self-doubt is normal. It's something that happens when you're going through all of your tools and everything that you were looking for. You are managing self-doubt. Try to not be in self-doubt. Try to think about what the next day is going to go through. If you can sort of like get through your first day, then you can try and go into the next day and the next day and go through it. There's lots of like, again, like podcasts and that sort of stuff where you can start to think about self-doubt. Try not to be in self-doubt. Try and think about like to take that little pocket into yourself, take that self-doubt away and try and push yourself together as much as you possibly can. I am trying to do my self thing that I do to have things. I have self-doubt all the times. Even when I had things were going great for me, I was still having self-doubt. Yes, self-doubt is a serious issue, but please don't, right? Even just one day, go out, get a walk, get yourself together. Don't take any self-doubt out there, right? There is this little pocket that's in your brain and it's there. And obviously when my brain couldn't work, and it still doesn't sometimes, I start having self-doubt. Try your absolute best not to go through your self-doubt. Even obviously when we're talking about being a dad, try not to have like self-doubt as being a father as much as you possibly can. Trying to be a good father is from the very beginning, from when your first child is born. And then obviously you've got to have more. If you want to. I've had the split, so I can't have any more children. Happy days. I won't have any more children. No chance. No chance at all. But now obviously because it's going to pay for all four of them. But yeah, like I say, try not to have like self-doubt. I guess that like the big one for me is, even when sometimes now, is my guilt. And again, it goes back to self-doubt. Try not to have like feel that it's wrong. Like, again, sort of like trying to look after your son or your daughter, and you've got like this massive guilt, and you can't pay for everything. You can't give them the best things that you want to, because financially things are tough. But you're trying your absolute best to make sure that like you feel like this massive guilt. And then obviously you start to pay things over, and you're trying to use like things financially, and then obviously it goes back to sort of like that self-doubt situation and how you feel like in real guilt. Things become like really difficult. So like try not to feel like things are like on real guilt and that sort of stuff. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to finish this one. um, I reflect on what keeps you going. So I guess what keeps me going, even when there's been times where I've been so stressful and thinking about maybe taking my own life. And for me to say that is the hardest thing to say. And you know what? I don't think I ever would, as long as I've got my children. Now, there's been situations where people have, there's been various situations where they've, for whatever reason, something's happened, and then all of a sudden you can't see your children, or something happens, and it goes like that. Try to do the best as you can for the love of your family and for your children. You should always try to be your absolute best and best as you can. Don't ever stop. Always do the best thing that you can do for your children. Being a father has been one of the most biggest challenge that I ever will and will always stay with me forever. I'm very lucky, like I said, I've got my mum and obviously my stepdad and obviously my close family, which I find very close. And like I said, there's been things down the road where I've made bad decisions. But I know the reason is 9 times out of 10, the bad decisions of not seeing my children is because of other situations. Just keep it going. Like, don't ever stop. If you're not allowed to see your children, don't stop. Always push as much as you possibly can. There is always, again, there's charities, there are people to speak. We are here on Talk Tonight to talk about these sort of situations. I am here, and that's because of my podcast and my meeting other people as much as I possibly can. Please don't think that you ever will ever stop. Don't. Like I've said, I've got a link of the Samaritans, Calm, Mind, Men's Sheds Association, Families Need Fathers, Dad, Wales, Scotland. We've got links for everyone. Please use them if you are in stress. Again, don't ever stop for your children. Don't stop. And if you're not stopping them and you're not escalated from your children, you've got a problem. And if you are not paying for your children and you are not doing the right thing, you need to get yourself in a wobble and go and sort yourself out so that you can go and see your children. If you're not doing it, you've got a problem, a big one. So just like absolutely don't do it. Yeah? Do everything that you can for your children, but don't be that person that you are a not good person, right? Have a think about that and how that affects other people when you're not looking after yourself and you're not paying things that you should be. Yeah? Have a little think about that. Okay, so that's me being very sort of like very direct. I don't care. All I care about is obviously my close family and everyone I love for on Talk Tonight. I love you all, and I would like to say thank you to all of you for the everything that you do for us. And I guess I want Talk Tonight to thrive, and I wanted to keep it going. So again, much love to everyone. Thank you for joining. And like I said, if you've got any problems that you have, there is help. And if you need things like anything that you need help for, please just get in touch. Okay? There's always help here. Okay? There's therapy, there's anxiety, problems. Go and deal with it. We can help. Okay? Take care. And I will see you on the next podcast. It might be different. It might be other things to talk about. Okay? Take care. And I'll see you all soon.